This episode of Vintage Stormfront Freaks has been previously recorded. Well, welcome to the most entertaining weather podcast on your listening device. We are the Stormfront Freaks podcast. Thank you for listening. Our listener base is really growing right now, and we love it, so thank you. This is episode 15. We will be talking with the Weather Channel's winter weather expert, Tom Niziol, and he'll be joining us in our discussion about the challenges of forecasting winter storm snowfall amounts. All right, so welcome back. So we've got Tom with us here tonight, and so we thought it'd be fun to kind of discuss winter storm snowfall forecasting and really talk a little bit about how specific should the media get or how specific can they be. And so what I first wanted to do is bring up an article in NJ.com. It's by Len Melasergo, and it's called "Here's What 5 Forecasters Are Saying About the Expected Weekend Storm." Now, I'm not going to give you the date yet of this storm, but I'm going to talk a little bit, as the article does, talk about this upcoming weekend storm that was up in the Northeast. So he basically went on to the whole premise of the article was the fact that here's 5 major weather forecasting entities, and all of them are kind of coming up with some different solutions. And then I'm going to tell you what the actual result was and the storm and everything else. So this upcoming nor'easter, basically, so it was up in the Northeast. National Weather Service, so basically what he talked a little bit in the article about is the National Weather Service, at least at the time, and they may now too as well, but didn't really go out on a limb too much in talking about snowfall amounts. They talked just mostly about the fact, he says here, National Weather Service says, there's a potential for substantial precipitation, both snow and rain. Gusty winds could cause additional issues with blowing and drifting. Potential exists for 50-mile-per-hour gusts along the coast. Blah, 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 blah. So they didn't get a whole lot into it as far as snowfall amounts. AccuWeather, which is up in State College, Pennsylvania, where, of course, Brady did his internship, as everybody probably knows, unless you're listening for the first time. They basically they were predicting about 18 to 24 inches in northwestern New Jersey and the Lehigh Valley region, and, of course, some of the other regions less than that, but they were forecasting up to 18 to 24 inches. The Weather Channel, and you know what, I take that back. AccuWeather, I was reading ahead. AccuWeather, he said, was stating roughly about 6 to 12 inches of snow. And in the hardest hit areas, if the rain developed to snow, maybe 1 to 2 feet. Okay, it was the Weather Channel predicting 8 to 24 inches. WeatherWorks, a private weather consulting firm, was on the line predicting that the weekend storm could be a blizzard. They weren't predicting any snowfall amounts. They could be the blizzard of this particular year. I won't give the year yet. And the 5th one they had was the Eastern PA Weather Authority, who on Monday before the event was forecasting roughly 18 to 24 inches of snow. Okay, so different levels. Some were forecasting snowfall amounts, some weren't. Anybody want to guess what the storm was? Which storm?
Jonas?
It was, yeah. So This was Winter Storm Jonas, otherwise also known as Snowzilla, January 22nd to the 24th of this year of 2016, where there was up to 3 feet of snow in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast area. So the question obviously comes, the challenges, and there's a perfect example of forecasting snowfall amounts, and really also trying to ask the question, does location factor into early prediction?
In the question about location, meaning if your forecast entity is located?
No, location-wise, as far as where are you located where this storm is hitting, does that create some of the challenge? And we talked a little bit about that when we were talking with you earlier, Tom, but maybe you can give us your 2 cents.
It's such a challenge all the way around. There are so many factors that come into play when you are trying to predict what that atmosphere above you is going to be like, its temperature structure, and how these massive storms actually evolve. Trying to forecast, in my mind, snowfall amounts more than 3 days into the future to begin with, I think can oftentimes be a futile task. But people need to have that information to plan. And in this day and age, when you're running a school system or you've got to bring in salt and extra crews for clearing operations, you want to have some ideas to maybe what are the odds that we're going to have the big storm. And to me, that's a real important factor that we're starting to look into now in how to communicate the potential for a snowstorm for an area. And that is something we refer to as probability forecasting. So if I told you, well, we're looking at this, I can't give you an actual amount, but there's an 80% chance that we're going to get over a foot of snow. And oh, by the way, there's a 20% chance we're going to get only 2 or 3 inches. It gives people maybe a better idea that, well, 8 out of 10 times I'm going to get hit big. But there are 2 out of 10 times and we're not going to see anything out of this. This idea of doing probability forecasting and being able to communicate and educate the public to that is something that a lot of forecasters and scientists are talking about these days. So I hope I didn't jump the gun here on explaining that, but forecasting snowfall can be an extremely inaccurate science.
So is that where they start to use terminology as forecasters? Instead of coming down to numbers, they would say this could be a nuisance snow or a shovelable snow or a plowable snow, or a little bit more, but still not too quantitative?
That's another nice way to describe that, because it's a way that a lot of people who deal with this on a daily basis can assess the impacts. Shovelable snow, oh boy. That means it's going to be tough to get the car out of the driveway. I'm going to have to take more time to get the driveway shoveled. It's definitely going to take time to get to work. The parking lot may not be cleared. It kind of puts all that into someone's mind. So that's terminology, at least, that can give some people an idea as to what the impact is going to be. We love to throw around numbers a lot. So, but not everybody kind of equates all of these numbers in their minds. So that's another good way to maybe to communicate or assess impacts.
Yeah, Tom, and I think that's probably the biggest challenge, because you can be the best forecaster, but if you can't communicate your forecast in a way that makes sense, because the people, most people in public, or at least, a decent amount of them still think, they hear chance and they're like, oh, meteorologist, you don't know what you say it's going to be 50%. So one thing's going to happen. You don't really know what's going to happen. So I think it's very important that we communicate it in a very effective way. And I think people on social media, I actually did a story for our local newspaper, or our local TV station, The Lantern. All these people on Twitter that have access to these models now, they'll post these, I remember last year, there was someone on Twitter that posted a 15-day GFS model, and it showed Columbus getting like 32 inches of snow in like 48 hours. And right next to it, they had a picture of a train bowling through like 5 feet of snow, saying we're all going to die. And they were like sort of serious, and they had, a couple thousand followers on Twitter. And so I think that's a big part of that problem is because you can't just not allow these people to communicate that to the public, but you have to somehow, make the accredited institutions, be able to have more input than some of these other, other people on Twitter that just don't know what they're doing.
And here comes the train. I hear it in the background.
That's in my neighborhood. I put that in as a sound effect.
Perfect.
You hit on a great point there, and I have to touch on this one too, because you mentioned this forecast that comes out from this Twitter person we don't know who that person is. They've got like 2,000 followers. Mm-hmm. Well, if you dig into it a little more, he's 11 years old.
Yep. You're right.
And he's working out of his parents' basement. And this young forecaster extraordinaire who wants to go to school and learn about weather and meteorology is grabbing these model maps from 15 days out and putting them out there like it's some PhD who's doing this. So you're right, especially in today's social media world. There's all kinds. You can get any forecast you want. At 300 hours on the GFS, there's always a blizzard. So that's very important as well. In naming winter storms across the United States and learning about all the, the challenges that you have in a place like Denver or in Boston or in DC or you go on and on with this. We have to be very, very careful, especially meteorologists, in wish casting or we've had 3 model runs now that show that there's going to be a storm 5 days out. Let's tell people how much they're going to get. We have to be really careful about that because, as you all know, the farther out in time you get, the more uncertainty you're going to get typically in forecasts. Now, there are some weather patterns that will develop a weather system that the models can latch onto and they have very good success with. And in some of the cases, we can forecast with pretty good accuracy 3-4 days out how much snow is going to fall in an area. But in most of the cases, that's very difficult to do. In the same storm, we could forecast with very good accuracy what part of that storm may get a lot of snow, but in another part of the storm where the precipitation type may be changing, there's complete uncertainty. So I take us back to this probability forecasting that we look at, the probability that something is going to occur. And running a whole bunch of computer models we refer to as ensemble model forecasting, where we have a whole bunch of members of a team that start out with just little different initial conditions. They use little different microphysics and that in the models. And we run these time and time again, and we develop a consensus among these models. We then can come up with a kind of a probability of the different odds we have to an area getting a certain type of precipitation or a certain amount of snow. And that's what a lot of researchers are looking at these days. And that I know in the National Weather Service, they're looking at this very seriously.
Jen, what can you, from a social media standpoint, in all of this? Because we haven't gotten into that, right? We're just talking about the challenges that multiple weather entities are having, and then you throw in that social media aspect.
Well, and that's the problem. Nowadays, it seems like everyone has access to, computer models, all the different computer models. And back in the day, I don't think that was the case. And we've got a lot of big weather geeks, and having social, a place where you can just post and do whatever you want. A lot of people, and they're uneducated, but they're excited. They think they may know what they're looking at, and they'll post something like that, like 14, 15 days out, and they don't even understand what they're looking at, and they post it, and they scare everyone. And some of them actually have a decent amount of followers. And it's one thing for everybody to know that they need to trust their source of weather information. They got to be able to, look in depth at that person that's providing that information and actually see who that is. Is that 11-year-old boy that's actually in his parents' basement? Or is it, accredited meteorologist that actually has a degree? And most meteorologists on social will say they're an actual meteorologist, what school they went to, that sort of a thing. They'll have their credentials on there. So it's something to double check. If you see something wild like that, make sure that you just check the source. The problem is if someone posts something like that, it freaks people out and it goes like viral. I know some Facebook posts have gone viral like that, and it's our job, and it makes it very difficult for us to have to be like, okay, that's not true, calm people down, that's not going to happen. So unfortunately, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Social media is great. It's a great way to reach people and give the forecast, but you've got other people on there who aren't meteorologists giving the forecast too. So the best thing to do is make sure you know the person you're getting the information from, and it's a trusted source, whether it's a network, a local TV station, an individual meteorologist. Just make sure you know they're a accredited person.
Well, yeah, and Jen, here's
didn't
the...
we?
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, I was going to
Weathercasters?
ask Maz, and I think Maz is going to jump in there too, but I'm curious, Maz, just from a local forecasting standpoint, with the experience you've got, in a local setting, what are the pros and cons with being able to, and the rest of you can kick in too, from a national standpoint, trying to forecast for local snowfall amounts?
Well, the one plus is obviously being able to pronounce the names of towns better than on a national level. Just saying, but
True.
but I would say like Tom, I would never ever in my wildest dreams ever go up against him forecasting for Buffalo, because he is probably the greatest expert in the world, because he's lived there, he's forecast there, he's worked there, he's done the science there. So there's something to be said about someone who's been in a localized area for a long time. All right. But that being said, I can't turn the other channel off. I love it. I love it. I love watching you guys. You're awesome.
Yes.
Thanks.
And that'll be $10.
At the Weather Channel, it can be hard to forecast, I think, locally, because a lot of local meteorologists have been there, 10, 15, 20 years or more, and they know the area and the weather systems and how it impacts them, their microclimates and all that. But at the Weather Channel, we have so many people there that are from so many different areas and know those little things in those different regions, little small towns, and that does help us out a lot, whether it's an on-camera meteorologist or a meteorologist behind the scenes. But still, sometimes we don't know some of the really, intricate, really, really small microclimates.
Right. I agree.
But I do think there's something to be said too about the Weather Channel, because, people aren't, say the National Weather Service were to put on, start their own local TV station. I can guarantee you a lot more people would still want to watch the Weather Channel. So even though some of these forecasters have some of these nuances of these local networks, people might never, ever, hear about them, because these weather, meteorologists might not have the chance to communicate them. So that's, one thing that the Weather Channel has is they can attract a bigger audience, because I know none of my friends are ever going to watch, a local weather cast from a local meteorologist or a National Weather Service meteorologist. That's something that the Weather Channel has going for them, is they can actually attract a bigger audience to that platform.
Well, and I'll say this last, and I'll throw this out to everybody. It's kind of the last question, but two things with this question. Number one is, with the current prediction abilities that we have, what's the best solution? Is it going to this probability snow amount scenario? Is that the best solution? Number two is, what's the science that we're missing, without getting too sciencey? What are we missing that's going to allow us to maybe better predict snowfall amounts?
I would say the one thing about the probability is, if it's more than, say, 48 hours, maybe stick with more probabilities, and then within 48 hours, then you start to try to give totals.
Good. I like that.
That's kind of what we've been trying to do lately, at least even with on the lift. I tell you, there's days I remember being in a room with like 20 Mets looking at a storm, and every model was different. The Euro was different. The GFS was different. The RPM was a little different. Like all these, and I was like, thank God it is not up to me to make this decision, because I just need to throw my hands up and go, I don't know. And I remember, because it was one of those big snowstorms, there was a lot of ice involved. And once you get ice, you're shutting down cities. So, I mean, I think it's really tough.
So what are we missing? Is there something from a scientific standpoint that will that if we had more of this or whatever it is, it's going to allow us to better forecast snowfall amounts?
I mean,
do we know what that is?
we have models, maybe higher resolution. I mean, they're getting better all the time. They're getting more high res all the time. I mean,
It's just the track sometimes, though. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's track of a storm, I mean, even by like 20, 30 miles or less can really impact, especially like the back side of a storm and, the transition zone. I mean, it can be so difficult sometimes. I mean, I think Tom talked about this before, like, one area is going to get pounded. They're definitely going to get, a set amount of snow, but it's the one that they could get sleet, freezing rain.
Yeah.
You don't know exactly where the storm's going to track. It's difficult. I think it's just, like Dina said, high resolution models, our tools, we need more improvement on that. But I like what Dina said about the probabilities. I think it's smart, up until about 2 days ahead of time, do the probability forecasting and then start, putting out totals.
Well, yeah, and I think Tom, yeah, go ahead, Mass.
I was just going to say, and I think like everything, it's just, and I don't mean just experience of a person. I mean, I've watched the Weather Channel from like day one when MTV came out initially. I mean, the Weather Channel has gotten so good at what it does that, people they'll still watch their local guys, but they're always going to turn, I believe, to the Weather Channel to see what's really going on.
Yeah, and truthfully, Matt, Maz, I'll be honest to our listeners, he's speaking from the heart. I know we've got 3 Weather Channel people on tonight, but he's speaking from the heart when he says that, and I believe him as well. Brady, what were you going to add?
Well, and I think, Phil, just like Tom was talking about earlier, probability is the future of forecasting and ensembles, and that's where all the research being done. And if you really look at what is going to give you the most accurate information, it's going to be looking at the ensembles, because like Tom said, it's taking one model and it's running it 52 different ways with 52 different initial conditions. And that is how you can forecast more, most accurately. You don't just take one model and say, hey, that looks good for me. I want snow and I think this is going to happen. So that's really why I think the future of forecasting is definitely going towards probabilities, and it already is, but that's really how you're going to make the most forecast, the most accurate forecast. And also, I think for improving these forecasts and models, you just need more data. We need to continue investing, because that's, if we had a sensor in every meter in the atmosphere, we would be able to predict weather a lot easier because we'd have much, much more data. But of course, that's not, feasible. So we have to find other ways to get data in convenient ways that we can collect it and process it. But that's how we're going to move forward in processing stuff.
Because then NASA just launched another satellite. I mean,
Yep.
So
Yep.
I mean, that's smart.
And that's going to improve. That's going to improve it a lot.
And also understand the fact that if you haven't talked about this already, don't poo-poo the idea of just how far we've come with computer modeling and how much more accurate our forecasts are overall, even in the last decade here. I mean, I go back through a long career, and to see just how much better the models are able to simulate the atmosphere and how much more accurately we can predict going out in time, it really amazes me. Yes, we've got a long way to go, but we've come a long way as well.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's easy for people to forget that, we've got satellites and this stuff's got to go to space and back. And, we gotta realize what we've accomplished and what we've done.
Kelly Williamson is our guest tonight. He's a storm chaser and star of Storm Wranglers. So I read his bio and I was like, this guy's so cool. Okay, so he's a storm chaser. He's a cattle rancher out of Southwest Missouri. And this is my favorite, a rodeo bullfighter.
Gosh.
I've never talked to a rodeo bullfighter ever, so this is going to be fun. I'm excited about this. But, I love that you're wearing a Weather Channel hat. It's great. And yeah, I know you've done lots of live streaming with us and the Weather Channel and lots of different outlets. But my one question, Kelly, and I think because I've known people who've done what you do, have you ever had a really close call that really scared you?
Well, I had a couple this year, but the main one we had in North Dakota this year, we was kind of following a tornado along there, and we was kind of cutting behind it. When we cut around to go behind it, we met a second tornado coming down the road straight at us. And that was a little bit spooky in its own right there. It's about 100 yards in front of us, and
Wow.
we just kind of sat there and just kind of let it go by us on the right. And when it got to our right, then we went on down the road. So we just kind of had to wait for it to get out of the way.
Because how many years have you been storm chasing?
I think this will be my 5th year.
Oh, really? So, I mean, do you guys usually have, like, how many people do you usually have out with you?
Just me and Randy, pretty much. During the summer, a lot of times we'll have a camera guy with us, but usually it's just me and Randy most of the time.
Wow. Wow, because go ahead, Jen.
So Kelly, how did you get into storm chasing? Like, what sparked your first chase? You're like, you know what? I think I'm going to actually drive and try and catch this storm.
I did all my whole life, I've kind of been infatuated with, weather. Being a farmer, all the farmers are wondering what the weather's going to be. It's going to rain, so I've really paid attention, and I used to do a lot of pro fishing and that's all around the weather. So my whole life, ever since I was a little kid, what's the weather going to do tomorrow? So, I just got infatuated with the storms and kind of got into Skywarn. And there just wasn't enough storms around here to suit me. So I went a little farther and a little farther, and now I'm going everywhere.
Now, what's the busiest chase day you've ever had? Like, how many tornadoes have you seen in one day?
We've seen as much as probably 7 or 8 tornadoes in one day. That was
In one
good,
day?
strong. Yeah, and that's good, strong. We actually had the week of the Dodge City tornado. I really couldn't tell you how many we seen that week. It was just like every day there was, we'd see 3 or 4 tornadoes every day, just about that whole week. It was just wild.
So how did you get your show on the Weather Channel? Like, how did all that come about?
That was kind of a deal. I didn't really expect it. I went down to a little meeting at the Weather Channel, and I think they kind of had this planned and didn't fill me in on it. But they actually asked me if I'd be interested in doing a show, and actually I turned them down and told them no. I wouldn't. I didn't think I wanted to do that. I hadn't even thought about that. And on the ride home, I got to thinking about it, and I thought, you dummy, you don't know where this will go. So I called them back and told them I'd try it.
Great.
Awesome.
So Kelly, give us a little update on Storm Wranglers. Then what's the plan going forward here? Is there going to be another season?
I'm sure that a lot of the girls there that work down at the Weather Channel kind of know they haven't had all their meetings yet, but. The plans are right now, I'm sure they're going to have a few more this next year. It just depends on how much money they're going to budget for it and how really strong we're going to go into it.
Well, so that's the update on Storm. How many other episodes are there of Storm Wranglers?
Right now, they're working on a 3rd, but they haven't finished it yet.
So, Kelly, what's harder, being a bullfighter or chasing a tornado?
It's that's been a few years back when I done that, but it's a lot the same. You think there's similarities. You get in a bad situation and you can't lose your head. You've got to keep a cool head, just the same as if you get close to a bull, if you lose your thinking and don't think right, things aren't going to go good. It's the same way chasing a tornado. If you get in a bad situation, you need to keep your head and just, and think right, not just go nuts. You can get, it'll be a bad situation if you get too scared.
Oh, I get that. So you own a farm. So who takes care of the farm when you're out chasing? Because you're out chasing a lot now.
I think we're on, so far, well, this year's over with. I think since April, we've done like 180 days.
Wow.
So we've been on the road an awful lot. And but my girlfriend Carol, she takes care of the farm while I've gone, and I've got one guy hard that helps a little bit, but it's the woman behind the scenes that allows me to go.
I hope you bring flowers.
That was his.
I know.
Flowers, gifts, flowers. That'd be good.
Now, Kelly, along those lines, as a show, you guys are probably, they don't pressure you to video tornadoes or get close tornadoes, but how much of an input do they have? Like, are they telling you, hey, you need to get this close, or do they kind of let you do your thing? And
they
you
really
have kind of freedom about that.
Yeah, they really push safety. That's one thing that they really do. I'm guessing
Okay.
a lot has to do with Mike's Bettis deal in Oklahoma, but
Yeah.
a lot of that's they pushing safety. They say if you don't feel comfortable, don't go there. So far I just try to get pretty close, but safety's number one. You don't do something stupid because you might not get to do it again.
Probably doesn't like that. You're getting too close. I know my mom doesn't want me going anywhere near a tornado.
Yeah.
Well,
and
Mom,
I'm sitting there, I've got two other guys sometimes in the truck with me, so I'm kind of responsible for them too. So I don't want to get them hurt, and they've got two wives that might come after me if I did. So we stay safe. We're real good at staying safe and always keeping a couple outs.
Kelly, what kind of equipment do you use, like to stay safe and to make sure that you guys?
I usually run two different radars, and then of course, we've all got cell phones with roads on it, and then actually I work with Storm View Live a lot, and we've actually got some people on Zello that's actually watching our back. We can talk to them on Zello if we get in any situation or something. If they see something coming up behind us and we're fixated on a storm, they'll let us know, there's another storm coming up to your south, or, there's another road you need to take up here, So there's people sitting at home helping us too. So it's not just us. There's a lot of people in the background.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And you've only been doing that, you said, for 5 years, Kelly. What I find interesting is you've gotten some great footage. Obviously, you've followed some great storms, and you've done all of that without having an atmospheric science or meteorological education. And so, to me, not being a meteorologist, I think that's very interesting. What kind of advice would you have for other listeners that are just storm fanatics and want to get better at this? What did you have to do to get so good at it, and what's the advice you can give to them?
Pretty much all what I learned come from social media, YouTube, a lot on YouTube. You can find about anything you want to find on YouTube. You can go, there's a lot of Skywarn stuff that you can read on there. I've read everything and listened to everything. And that's one thing I do. I don't get just one thing. I don't look at just one model and say that's the way it's going to be. I listen a lot to Dr. Forbes. He's been around a lot. I listen to the SBC. I listen to a lot of the other chasers on what they're thinking. And then I look at the models, and then I kind of put all that together and kind of what I think is going to happen. But I listen to everybody. It's not just one deal that I look at. I look at a lot of different deals and see what I think is going to happen, and don't just get stuck on one thing.
And that's how you started. That's how you started, and that's how you're continuing to do it, is just asking a lot of people, getting a lot of input.
Yeah, I've tried to get a lot of input from the Weather Channel, and they say, we hired you for what you do, just keep doing it, So, sometimes they don't want me to do something different. They don't want me to change things. So, so far it's worked. I don't get on every storm. You just can't do that. You miss them. There's one in Oklahoma I missed last year, and man, it still bugs me, but you just can't get on all of them, but we get on all we can.
What are the models that you're using? When you say you look at the models, which ones do you like that you tend to use the most?
I really like the HRRR, but that's the one I probably key on, the good short term, the short stuff up close, but I'm not real good when it comes to looking out a week. I'm terrible at that. I need some
join,
help on that.
Join other meteorologists, because I tell you what,
Yeah, join us.
Going
Join us.
out a week, it's still very tough for even I'm not even a meteorologist yet, but it's still very tough for even the experts. So.
And it's amazing, Kelly, because you always end up, though, in the right spot with, like, the best shot. Like, we're always, like, at the Weather Channel, like, he's on it again. I don't know how he does it, but he does. Like, you're so good for only doing it for a few years. And some chasers have done it for, like, 10, 20 years. It's pretty incredible what you do.
Well, it's a lot of work, and you can tell Randy. I tell him I don't know how many times go left, no go right, no turn around and go back. I drive him nuts sometimes because, we go a lot of miles, and it takes a lot of miles to get good storms. So just because, and I found out one thing, just because it's a slight risk don't mean something's not going to happen. So
that's exactly right.
We're just there. And, we get a lot of tornadoes. I think I've had over 40 tornadoes this year. And, but
Jeez.
we've had a lot of miles too. A lot of people probably hadn't got that many tornadoes, but they don't travel that many miles. It's a lot of miles per tornado.
Yeah. Kelly, you told us how many miles earlier. What was that number?
Yeah. I worked, let's see, I've put 80,000 on the truck, and we're 20 on this one. So I'd say we're probably close to 90,000 this year.
Wow.
Question: do you have car insurance for hail and some of those other things? It's got to be a nonstop problem.
No, this one here, we do have a few dents in the new Suburban, but my truck, that hood's a trophy.
I bet it is. Now, you've recently started chasing winter storms too. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've always chased winter storms. I've never went to like New York and places like that, but yeah, they started sending us on some winter storms. It's a little farther away. I've always done the stuff close to home, but it's really hard to travel a lot, when you've got icy roads. So, something goes off up north, we can kind of get up there before it happens and kind of hunker in and take it. But I've always done winter storms close to home.
Nice.
So what's involved in selling your videos? Because you talked about getting started. That's what you were trying to do was sell the video footage, and then that became the game, right? Is getting enough storms to kind of keep yourself afloat financially as well, which all chasers are facing that. So I guess, Kelly, what's involved? How'd you get started into doing that? What's involved in going, hey, I've got a video, now I want to sell it? What was your process getting started on that?
I actually started with Brett Adair when I first started, and I was with him for a long time, and he taught me a lot of things on how to film. I really didn't. I had never run a video camera that much, and I stayed with him a while. Then I was with Corey for a while, and I learned a lot from a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there that'll help you if you're just willing to listen. They'll give you a lot of good advice, and you have to sell a little bit along to travel a lot. You put a lot of miles on it, gets kind of expensive.
Yeah.
Are you using a service, or is that how it is with the guys you were with?
Yes. I was with Severe Studios, and Corey, he helped me a lot, on my filming and that. I'm still learning a lot on filming since I went to the Weather Channel doing some interviews and stuff like that. I'm having to learn a lot on the camera side of it now, when before I was just worried about taking a picture of the storm. But yeah, when you're out there chasing, it helps to supplement your income a lot.
Yeah. So are you getting paid per number of outlets that are buying that then through, whether it's Severe Studios or are you just getting paid to be on the storms? How is that working out?
No, you actually don't get paid unless you get something good, and that's one thing. There's a lot of people out there. The tornadoes, everybody wants to film tornadoes. You've got competition out there a lot. When I was filming tornadoes, where I probably made most of my money when I was selling video was actually flooding and winter stuff, because it's really not that exciting, and there's not that many people does it, so that is probably more money in doing other things other than tornadoes.
Yeah. Now, Kelly, which do you enjoy more? Is it tornadoes or winter storms?
Oh man, tornadoes all the way. That's it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
yeah,
what's
personally...
Tell us what your setup looks like. I want to know what's your vehicle setup now. I mean, you've been doing this for 5 years, so I imagine every year there's some new contraption you're adding to your vehicle. But give us an idea of what your vehicle setup looks like right now. What do you have in there?
If anybody's ever seen my vehicle, they wonder how I get in it. I've got a pretty good sized computer sitting here in front of me, and one camera up in the windshield, and then I've got another console here that I run a camera that's actually up on top of my vehicle. Then I've got up on the dash, I've got a live view that I actually stream back to the Weather Channel with. So there's not hard. It's kind of like crawling into a cockpit. There's not a lot of room in it.
So mostly your laptop is kind of the only vehicle or only thing you're using as far as GPS, radar. I mean, what else are you looking at then on your laptop?
Yeah, that's pretty. I run one stream through there. I run a stream, and then I run one road program, and then I usually run a GR Level 3 and a GR Earth, and then a lot of times I'll have a Facebook on there, so I can kind of talk a lot to the fans, and that that's one thing I've really keyed on a lot. I've got a lot of people that's followed me ever since I started chasing, and we like to include them a lot right in the chase.
Thank you for tuning in to the Stormfront Freaks podcast. You can watch our bi-weekly show live on youtube.com/StormfrontFreaks and download the audio version on your favorite podcast player. For links to our Patreon team of exclusive benefits, show notes, past shows, new videos, merchandise, and more, visit our website at stormfrontfreaks.com. While you're there, check out our interactive chaser radar from our friends at zoomradar.com. If you'd like to contact us with questions or make comments about the show, shoot us an email to questions@stormfrontfreaks.com or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. Search for Stormfront Freaks. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time and tell a friend about the Stormfront Freaks podcast.